Welcome to Wyck. Before we begin our discussion on Wyck, let's first review your last field trip with the 5 W's and 1 H. What is the name of the last house you visited? Who lived there? Why was this house important? When was it used as a station stop? Where is it located? How would you compare the Johnson House to Clifton and Stenton? How do we know about the Underground Railroad today? Let's do a little turn and talk. What was one thing you learned at the Johnson House? Let's get started on your next field trip, Wyck. Since Wyck is our last History Hunter's house, can you put the houses in order from oldest to newest using the following list? A. Stenton, B. Clifton, C. Belfield, D. the Johnson House, E. Wyck. Although Wyck is the last house we're talking about, it is actually the oldest, one of the oldest surviving houses in Germantown, built in 1690. The same Quaker family lived at Wyck for 9 generations. What is a generation? A German Quaker named Hans Milan built the first structure on the Wyck land in 1690. Hans Milan's daughter, Margaret, and her husband Dirk Jansen, or also known as Johnson, passed the house to their daughter Catherine and her husband Caspar Wister. The Wisters left their house to their daughter Margaret and her husband Reuben Haynes, a brewer and a merchant. From 1790s on, Wyck was owned by the Haynes family. Reuben Haynes III named the house Wyck after a country house in England owned by a Richard Haynes, who Reuben thought was his ancestor. Later, he found out they were not related, but the name stuck. There have been several changes to the Wyck house over time. Did Stenton House change? What about Clifton? Did Clifton change? Or the Johnson House, did it change? Wyck has gone through major changes over its lifetime. In the 1820s, for instance, the house was remodeled and made larger, connecting two separate structures together. Think back to Stenton. What was it like for the children in the house? What rules did they have to follow? Things were different for children at Wyck. Due to their Quaker beliefs, children had much more freedom and were considered equal to adults. You can see 3 common children's toys from hundreds of years ago on your screen. Do they look at all similar to toys you are used to playing with? The family that lived at Wyck were Quakers. Education and family were very important values. Due to their belief that all people have the light of God inside them, Quakers treated everyone equally, including people of different races, women, and children. The Quakers who lived at Wyck were abolitionists. Quakers are also pacifists, meaning they are against war and violence. Medicine and science. In early America, there was no such thing as a doctor's office like we know them. People would mostly be treated at home. Women were often the ones to take care of everyday illnesses in the family. They would use plants and animal products from the garden and farm to make medicines. You can see in this picture some different medical tools from the time. Wyck's Rose Garden. Wyck has the oldest rose garden in America. There are several medicinal or medical uses for roses, including use of rose oil for a calming effect and rose hips, which have an abundance of vitamin C. What else do we use roses for? Discussion questions. What was life like in early America based on what we've learned during History Hunters? How was life different for enslaved people, women, Native Americans? What are similarities and connections between the houses we visited? Differences? Why do we study history? Why is it so important to know our history? Reminder, you learned about the rules for visiting a house museum. Let's review them as a class before we go. Raise your hand if you remember an important rule. Enjoy your visit to Wyck.